Hey Summit Kids, Jamie here, and we're on day 13 of our walk through Matthew. So if you're new to joining us, you can download the Bible app, go to the kids section under plans, and scroll over until you see Walk with Jesus 21 days through Matthew. We're on day 13, and we're actually looking at Matthew chapter 14. We're going to look at the feeding of 5,000. Now, I know you guys have heard this story before, but I'm hoping that you can learn something new from this story and listen for something you haven't heard before. So, let's start. Before we start at verse 13, which talks about the feeding of 5,000, let's look at verses 10 and 11. First, we see here that John the Baptist had been killed. He had been beheaded. And then his disciples went and they told Jesus. Now remember, John the Baptist was Jesus's cousin, and he was the one that was preparing the way for Jesus. He was preaching of Jesus. He was like a big support for him. And now his cousin, his big support, was killed. Wow. That would be hard for a lot of us. We have a family member who passed away. Now, verse 13, let's look at this. Jesus heard this. He withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. Can you imagine? You just hear your cousin died and you are sad. You're so sad and you're hurting. And man, that's hard. But then these people hear that you're moving to a different place, and then thousands of people follow you. Okay, I just wanted to be alone a little bit, right? But no, what happened here, verse 14, he went ashore, he saw the great crowd, and he had compassion for them, and he cured their sick. They heard he moved, and they were scared and worried because they had people who were sick by them, and they wanted those people to get better, and they knew Jesus was healing people, so they brought their sick to him. And he had compassion, even though he was so sad and probably tired at this point, and he had compassion on them and he healed them anyway, right? When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "There's a deserted place and the hour is late. Send the crowds away so they may go in the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "They don't need to go away. You can give them something to eat." Why did he do this? Okay. I thought when I was a kid, it was just because Jesus wanted them to see a miracle. Well, that's not the whole story here. What we know is that this was a smaller area. So it's a deserted area. It's away from towns. The nearest towns, they couldn't have, so we know that this is feeding 5,000 people, plus mothers and women and children. Those towns couldn't support that many people coming in and wanting food from them. So Jesus is like, okay, if these people go to the towns, they're not going to get the food they need. They're going to be stressed out and hungry. And, they had sick with them who are now healed. So let's just take care of them. And then the disciples said, well, we have nothing here. We only have 5 loaves and 2 fish. Jesus, I don't think 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish are going to feed over 5,000 people, right? And he said, "Bring them here to me." And he ordered the crowd to sit down on the grass, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. And he looked up to heaven, he broke the loaves, and he gave them to the disciples. So he's like, all right, here are the loaves. And he's like, all right, God, I need you, Father. I need you to multiply this. He was just breaking them, giving them to the disciples, giving them to disciples, breaking. This is something that was amazing. This is something that actually reminds us of Elisha. Where was it? It was Elisha. I can't remember exactly the passage. Let me see. Elisha, 2 Kings 4, 42 through 44. If you read it, Elisha was trying to feed 100 men. He only had 20 loaves. And he's like, these 20 loaves aren't going to work, but I'm going to trust God, and there's going to be extra. So he broke them, and there was extra then. Now this is even crazier with 5 loaves and 2 fish and over 5,000 people, right? And Jesus is like, it's going to be fine. Prayed, and God blessed it, and it was just multiplied. The disciples gave them to the crowds, and they ate and they were filled, and they took what was left with them, all the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. I just want to challenge you with this verse, with this passage. When I read it, what's sticking out to me is how tired Jesus was, how saddened he was, but he saw the people and what they needed, and his heart broke for them. He's like, they need to be healed. They are so desperate to be healed. If I can do this, I'm going to do it. So I'm going to heal them. Man, these people are hungry. They're not going to be able to get food. Here, let's feed them. I want to challenge you with that. Can you up your compassion game? I want you to take your journal out and think about areas in your life where maybe you hold back a little bit and you're not as giving. Or maybe write down areas where you have had compassion before. You see people who are hurting, and write out a time or two when you had compassion on them and you did something kind for them. And I want you guys to write out a prayer and just ask God to learn to be more compassionate, just like Jesus was in this story. All right, guys. Well, it was so great seeing you, and we'll see you again tomorrow for day 14.